Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Jason with Bent's Woodworking, and today I'm bringing you another video from my previous shop that I realized I never did a video on. And that is the maple and walnut tool storage cabinet that I made for my previous shop, which I'm still using in my current shop, and I made it to replace this ugly thing. While the current drill storage cabinet has served its purpose and has done well for me, it just wasn't really something that I enjoyed looking at, and also I felt like I could come up with a better solution for some of my tools. Now I know some people might be thinking, why would you be using walnut and maple to build shop cabinets? Well, I kind of like having that stuff in my shop. You know, my shop is a place where I enjoy being, and I want to enjoy looking at the things that are in my shop. And luckily I had some of this leftover number 2 common walnut, which I was actually able to pick up for very inexpensive. So since I figured I wasn't going to be able to use this on some other projects, this would be a perfect application for it. And to start the process off, I did the typical thing and I took all this rough lumber and I started to mill it down to the desired dimensions that I wanted for this project. Another common question that I will go ahead and address right now is a lot of people have asked me, well, why would you use hardwood to build a cabinet like this? Aren't you concerned about wood movement, etc.? And the answer is not really. And at the end of the day, if something happens, it's a shop cabinet and it'll be just fine. But what I can tell you is that I've had this in my shop for going on about 1.5 to 2 years now, and it looks exactly the same today as it did when I built it. As I stated before, this walnut is number 2 common, so it's prone to having quite a few knots and defects in it. And so after I had everything milled to the approximate size that I needed each piece to be, I went ahead and took the time to fill some of the holes using this Rangate knot filler system. Next, I went ahead and started cutting all the grooves and dados that I would need for the cabinet construction, and that consisted of a dado across the side to hold a permanent fixed shelf, as well as a groove along the back to handle the back panel. Once those were cut, I went ahead and did a quick dry assembly just to make sure that everything fit properly. One thing that I really wanted to incorporate into this storage cabinet is not only a location for things like glue and finish, my drills, etc., but I also wanted to come up with a way to incorporate my nailers into this. And this is a really cool little tip that I picked up from my buddy Keith Johnson, better known as KJ Sawdust, and he also has a YouTube channel, and I will leave a link to it down below if you guys want to check it out. It's fantastic. But basically what I'm doing is I'm taking the female sleeve version for these air guns, and I'm going to put those in the wood by threading them into the wood, and then I can hang my guns from them. It was just a really cool idea that I saw him do once on his Instagram page, and I knew that it was something that I wanted to incorporate into this cabinet, and it's probably my favorite feature. Next, I moved on to cutting the pieces and assembling the door that I will be using, which I'm just going with a simple shaker style design. While the door was drying in the clamps, I took this opportunity to go ahead and pre-do all of my shelf pin holes for the one adjustable shelf that I will have inside of it. After that, I went ahead and broke down my 1/4-inch maple ply, which will act as the backer for this cabinet. And now that I had all of my pieces ready, it was time to go ahead and do my assembly. And the assembly on this is really quite easy. I just use some glue and some screws, and then I'll take care of the visible screws here in a moment. I did the assembly in stages by attaching the sides to the bottom and then attaching the permanent shelf, and then that allowed me to slide the back panel in. And once I had the back panel in, I went ahead and added the top the same way that I did the bottom. To take care of the visible screw holes, I decided to use some maple plugs, and I thought the maple would be a good contrast, seeing as how I am using a maple panel in my door. I just glued them in place and then cut everything flush with a flush cut saw and then sanded everything smooth. Just a quick check to make sure that my door dimensions were correct, even though at this point it probably would have been a little too late. I'm going with a French cleat system to hang this cabinet, so I cut 2 pieces with opposing 45-degree angles, one which goes on the wall and the other which goes on the back of the cabinet. And the one in the cabinet I always cut the full size, and the one that I hang on the wall I always cut a little bit shorter to give me a little bit of room. And to attach it to the back of the cabinet, I don't do anything special, just use some pocket screws. Now with the majority of the cabinet assembled, it was time to remove this ugly one and see exactly where I wanted the new one to go. Next, I went ahead and laid out where I needed my hinge locations to go so I could actually have everything ready to be clipped in once I had it hanging on the wall, and I went with some Euro-style full overlay hinges for this. After attaching my hinge plates, I went over to my drill press and drilled out my 35mm holes for the hinges, and then attached the hinges. Once everything was attached, it gave me an opportunity to quickly clip in the door and just make sure everything lines up and adjust as necessary. And before starting the finish, I went ahead and made sure that my adjustable shelf fit just right. And as with most projects that I do in my shop now, the finish that I used was Rubio Monocoat. So after a quick cleaning with the raw wood cleaner, I went ahead and started to apply the Rubio Monocoat to the cabinet and the door. The next day after it dried for 24 hours, I came out and it was time to get everything hung up on the wall. And the only thing left was to put everything in its new home, and this was a much better solution to what I currently had. As a matter of fact, I actually had to find more things just to put in it to fill up the space. This was a fun project and turned out to be a really nice looking cabinet that is pretty easy for anybody to build. That's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you guys found it helpful. And if you saw any techniques in there that you have questions about, there's a very good chance that I probably have a video covering it on my channel. So be sure to go check out any of the videos that I have, and you might find them helpful. Thank you for watching, and until next time, get out in the shop, try something new, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.